Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at CoreWeave. It is time for another update, and today we'll be discussing the extension we have managed to form since the previous video within this area, as well as the next levels of support to watch for continuation higher. But before that, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here on this chart we have been tracking this area of a 1-2 setup ever since we actually formed the top within this wave 1. We were looking for a 3-wave correction in a wave 2 within this exact area of support between the $97 all the way down to the $48.5 level. Along the way we were looking for possible bottoms at these initial lows. We were tracking this structure ever since we were somewhere around this area, and we were looking for continuation lower. We were considering this to be the potential 3-wave structure in the area of support we were tracking. We were looking for possible reversal here and here, but since we failed to hold here relevant levels of support internally, we started looking with higher likelihood and preference for a reset of the wave 2 in white, a larger correction in a larger 3-wave move to the downside. And even though we managed to extend a little higher along the way, we were looking still at this with high probability, and it ended up following through. We now have a larger 3-wave correction complete. I would need no additional lows to consider this structure, this wave 2 correction done. And at this point, I wouldn't even consider this to be still part of the wave C if we were to reverse and extend within a follow-up movement, if we were to fail, for example. So for these reasons, we aren't even going to track on this channel this yellow interpretation anymore. For all purposes, it can be considered complete, and if we extend lower, it would be within a different pattern. Even though it did fulfill its purpose, we can now consider this wave 2 complete, but we don't need to track the internal structure of a previous movement anymore. We can now look for the next wave to the upside and for the next relevant levels of resistance, and for that we have this orange interpretation, for which we have the area of resistance between $89.4 all the way up to the $127 level. Now, if we manage to break above the 78.6% retracement, it would be a strong signal that this structure is not going to extend lower, that we shouldn't expect something like an ABC within this area to take us still to lower prices, and that we could be looking even for the next relevant levels of resistance. Now, there is still one more area, but neither of them are actually highly suggestive or high probability interpretations that allow for continuation lower. Based on the current structure on this chart, I prefer that the bottom is in place and that we can start looking for the next wave to the upside, whether that is a larger wave 1 part of the larger wave 3, whether that is the entire next wave within the wave 3, whether that is just a wave C, because this doesn't need to form a third wave to the upside, but that is what we are focused on, that is what we are preferring, because nothing is really forcing this to be a wave 1 up. It could be a wave A just as fine, and then we would be tracking a wave C instead of a wave 3. Now, with that said, in this area we have been tracking this blue scenario, where we have this idea of an ABC structure that could extend higher. Now, the issue with this interpretation is not that it's not necessarily the most likely. It actually might be the most likely interpretation, but the problem is that this is a corrective pattern. This could be, for example, an A wave down within a 5-wave move, a B wave up in a 3-wave correction, and it could allow very easily another 5-wave move to the downside within the wave C. And again, from the larger time frame perspective, that is not needed. It's not even preferred necessarily, but it can allow such an interpretation. We don't want to see the structure stop at a 3-wave pattern. But since within this initial movement to the upside, we can only track this either as a wave A or basically as a series of 1-2 setups within this area, we are kind of forced to look into these interpretations. Now, could this still work out into something more bullish? Well, of course it could. And one of the viewers actually even asked me, what follows after the wave C? Well, it's a bit more nuanced, because let's say we actually build this exact pattern. We follow through in this ABC movement, never mind the internal structure, we will talk more about that in a moment, but let's say we complete this ABC structure. So again, this could be the wave B in the orange interpretation, but even then, it doesn't need to. It could also work out part of a larger leading diagonal. It could work out as a wave 1, part of a larger 5-wave move to the upside. Now, in that case, every single wave within this structure would be expected to be in a 3-wave move, along the way. And this could end up being either a wave 1 to the upside part of a large wave 3, or it could be a wave C. I mentioned earlier, this could be just an ABC structure. This could be an ABC within the wave 1 of the larger wave C. Yeah, these are pretty much our options. This could, of course, not turn only into a wave 1, it could turn into a wave A itself. Yeah, the wave A could extend the same way we have here an ABC within the wave A. We could form a large ABC within a larger wave A. That is all the same. These are basically all the options that we could see form after the wave C is complete. Now, unfortunately, there are quite a lot of possibilities, and that is the case with diagonal structures. That is the case with corrective patterns. They are more difficult to track. That is why every single time we see an impulse, the levels are much more clearly defined, invalidation is much more clear, and also the possibilities are much more restricted, yeah, much more structured. Everything is better basically for us regular traders, yeah. But unfortunately, we do not create the waves, we can only ride them, and in this case, this is what we are dealing with. Now, I cannot guarantee that this will work out as an ABC structure. In fact, it would be even better for us if we create within this time frame a 5-wave move to the upside, if we create this as a larger leading diagonal, because then we would have a 1-2 setup. We would have a high probability area for entry for continuation within, at the very least, another 5-wave move to the upside. And yeah, that 5-wave move could be even more impulsive. It could be the wave 3 of a wave 3. We would have here basically a double 1-2-1-2 setup. A third wave of a third wave would follow. Everything would be great. Everything would push very high. It would be all sunshine and rainbows. That's exactly what we want to see. But I cannot guarantee that will work out, but I will track such an idea. Although for now, we are still within the wave C that we have been tracking since the previous video. So if you remember, within this wave C, we were looking at an ending diagonal, because within this wave 1 I don't have a 5-wave structure. Within this wave 1 I have here maybe something like an ABC, in which case I'm looking also for an ABC within the wave 3, and this seems to be exactly what has formed within this area. So in the previous video we were looking here at an ABC to form here the third wave to the upside. And I wouldn't necessarily consider this is exactly how it played out. I would rather consider that this was an ABC in a wave A. So we pushed here a little higher from the area of support I provided you within this 5th wave. We now have a wave A complete here. We have here a tiny wave B correction, and I would consider this to be the wave C to the upside, part of the larger wave 3. Now in this case, we would need still a 4th and a 5th to complete the larger wave C. Although at that point, if we actually follow through within this pattern, we would need to be prepared for a more severe correction. This would not really allow many options for further extensions higher. Sure, it could work out within a larger 1-2 setup. Even from this, I could track a series of 1-2 setups theoretically, but they're not going to be high probability interpretations. This actually works out much better as an ABC, and the reason that I cannot track this as a 5-wave move is basically because within this area, I see this very much as a diagonal structure. So I'm tracking this once again as an ABC within a wave A. We have here a tiny wave B and a wave C. This would complete a large wave 3. Now this is when we actually form a top, because this would be allowed to extend a little higher. Yeah, this could even form something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th and a 5th. And then we would be looking for the wave 4 correction. Now, what I can provide you, however, are some areas of support for such an interpretation. So firstly, for direct continuation higher, I would be watching the levels between the $100 all the way down to the $97 level. This would allow here an extension within this area as a 1-2 setup, and let's say we even allow it to unfold as an ending diagonal. In this case, we can track this from the 96.5 level being the last level of support for direct continuation higher within this structure. But from a larger time frame perspective, which is what's more important, which is what I prefer to focus on, I am tracking the area of support for a wave 4 correction. And in this case, I would be watching the levels from the 23.6% retracement, the $95.2 level, all the way down to the $83.8 level. So we can go all the way down to the $84 level basically without invalidating this idea of a correction within the wave 4. If we are to actually extend this low, it would be no problem. I would expect though similar proportions for for what we had here within the wave 2. Yeah, I would expect similar proportions within this correction in wave 4, and if we move higher within this wave 3, this area of support would need to come along. Yeah, if we follow through within the yellow interpretation, which allows extensions higher, this area of support would need to follow. And I have been considering what other patterns could work out on this chart, but unfortunately, I cannot really track this as a wave 3, even within a leading diagonal, at least not yet, because if I am to consider this to be something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and a 5th, I would expect this wave 3 to have reached at least the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 to be able to track it as a reliable structure, to be able to track a correction in a wave 4 in the yellow interpretation where the wave 3 is complete as a reliable structure. And for that, I would need to see the $108.5 level be reached. We could do that. If we do manage to do it, I could track this as maybe as an ABC structure. It could work out, but once again, I would need to get to the ideal target. Yeah, then we can track a correction in a large wave 4, and we can track continuation higher within a 5th wave. And if we actually manage to build this interpretation in yellow, or let's say we use the green scenario because we have here this yellow area of support, but if we manage to build this interpretation in green, we would have the high probability trade setup in a 1-2 setup. Yeah, this is not the case. For now, we are watching the current levels of support we have, and these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.